صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. First of all, before I begin, it's very humbling for me to be up here beside Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi. He is, as many of you know, thanks. As many of you know, we're both from Toronto, so he is, besides being a father figure for me, he's also an alim for me and a leader and a guide for me, and for me to be up here with him, who is my teacher, was very, very humbling. So please, for his tawfiq, for his health, inshallah, for the manfaq of his parents, inshallah. One salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And I wouldn't have the himmat to be up here speaking before him, but it's only because we want him to end the program, inshallah. And at the request of some of you, I'll say a few words, but really we're here to benefit from the alim who's present. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع قلوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل البيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الله أعداءهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's always a pleasure and always nice to speak with the youth, and mashallah, I don't think I've ever seen this many youth in New Jersey at one time, which goes to show you that it's very much possible to do what all of you are trying to do today, and that's unite the different groups across this state. And I'll be very brief. There are a couple of lessons from history I want to present to all of you, inshallah. To talk about the idea that Islam has always depended and relied heavily on the efforts and the tawfiq and the taqwa of the youth. There's never been a case where Islam, whether it was establishing in the time of the Holy Prophet, or it was surviving on the day of Ashura, or it's awaiting for the Savior in this era. Whatever stage of Islam was at or is today has always depended and relies today heavily on the heart of the youth. Last night at our lecture in the evening, we spoke about the idea of understanding the qadr of the insan, qadr shinasi, to understand that we are the best creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Within that creation, the love and the azamats and the greatness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for the young individuals far exceeds anybody else. And simply because He understands that the softness of your hearts, the accepting of the truth that exists inside of you, doesn't exist in any other creation out there. That's why we see, if you start off with the arrival of Islam during the age of ignorance, our Holy Prophet Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, all throughout his 23-year mission, used the youth and assigned the youth some of the most crucial responsibilities of his mission. In fact, oftentimes it was the elders that existed around the Holy Prophet that would complain to the Holy Prophet that we're mawjood, we're here, Ya Rasulullah, you're asking these kids to hold out and to carry out these important missions. Just a few examples to understand at what potential all of you exist. You know, one point that I wanted to make last time that I ran out of time, and I'll start off with this and we'll move towards the historical aspect, is that the reason why we were trying to paint this picture last night of the fact that you are far greater than you think you are. The potential all of you have as young individuals, and really as the human race in general, far exceeds what we believe it to be. That's why when you sell out to this qadr you have, this value you have, this bulandi you have in the eyes of Allah, for this dunya, it boggles the mind of Allah. But Allah has placed you at such a high level where now you represent Him on this earth amongst the different creations. That's how high you are in the eyes of Allah. Now to sell that out for a few extra dollars, for some shahwa and some desire, for moments of pleasure with the opposite gender, all of that doesn't make sense to any normal human being. And that's why we see that, for example, there were many, many companions that existed around the Holy Prophet that existed at a very, very young age and were given very crucial responsibilities. For example, Bilal Habashi, as many of you know, was a slave. And when Islam arrived, he accepted Islam immediately. And Bilal's taqwa and piety has been discussed several times across different various lectures. He was the same individual who was the first mu'adhin of Islam, the first individual to give the adhan of Islam. And as many of you have heard several times, he wasn't of the Arabic language. His pronunciation of the adhan was accurate. The Arabs would be so upset and say, Ya Rasulullah, the Ahl Zaman, you're asking this individual, can you say sheen properly to give the adhan? Bilal was 19 years old, some individuals say. 19 years old. And this is a point to my elders too in the audience. Sometimes we think that 18, 19 years old, he's a kid, he doesn't know anything. The Prophet time and time again showed us, at the tender age of 19, if the heart is in the right state, he could play a vital role in Islam's mission. Bilal was one example. Mus'ab ibn Umair, or Amir in certain books, is another example. Mus'ab is a very famous story. Who was Mus'ab? Mus'ab was a child to very rich parents. They were so rich, the stories the books tell us, that while Mus'ab lived in the Arabian Peninsula, if he craved some food from Iran or from Rome, he would send a servant to go get him, let's say, a certain drink and bring it back. Now, they had no cars and planes back then. This guy would go 3 days, let's say, pick up a drink and bring it back for Mus'ab. That's how spoiled this kid was. And they said that he was walking past the house of Rasulullah at the advent of Islam, and he heard our Holy Prophet reciting the Quran in his very magical voice that he did. And Mus'ab was caught. He was completely mesmerized. He would sit there and just be in a state of lizzat, hearing the Holy Prophet recite the Quran. Approaches the Holy Prophet, asks him to teach me about the deen. Now the Holy Prophet knew who Mus'ab was. He knew exactly who the family was. But nowhere do we say that he shooed away Muslims. Look, you're a spoiled, rotten kid. There's no room for Islam for you. He took Mus'ab under his wing. Taught him the details of Islam. When the Khazraj and Aus tribe approached our Holy Prophet, I'm going very, very quickly here, approached the Holy Prophet asking for some sort of solution to our fighting in Yathrib, the Holy Prophet told them, look, accept Islam, that's your solution. When they said, look, we're going to go back to Yathrib and talk to our fellow tribesmen, I want you to send an ambassador to represent you in Yathrib. Our Holy Prophet sent who? Mus'ab. 18 years old. Mus'ab went to Yathrib, spoke to both tribes, converted both tribes, led the first Jamaat prayers in Yathrib before the Hijrat of the Holy Prophet. Sent a letter to the Holy Prophet saying, look, everything is ready for your migration now. Yet the Holy Prophet wasn't going to move. He didn't decide on the very famous migration until an 18-year-old wrote him a letter saying, make that move, Holy Prophet. And the Holy Prophet, based on the words of Mus'ab, made that famous migration from Mecca to Medina. As many of you know, established the Islamic government in Medina, all because of the efforts of an 18-year-old. Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi salatu wasalam. We hear about the history and how if it wasn't for the shuja'at of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Islam would not have survived. All these different stories about the war, about Khandaq, Kindi, Kullu Iman, the door of Khaybar, the Ghadir, all these things that we really, really enjoy. Do we know how old Amir al-Mu'mineen was during those years? When he was Kullu Iman in the eyes of the Holy Prophet, 27 years old. He represented to the Holy Prophet the entire dimension of faith at 27 years old. On the day of Ghadir, some books say he was 33 years old. 33 years old. The only complaint the Ashab had to the Holy Prophet was, "Ye to bacha hai." How is he going to lead the nation? We're older. But the Holy Prophet said it was never about age, always about taqwa and taqwa alone. It wasn't about how many hairs are gray in your beard. It's about the state of your heart inside of you. And he proved to us back then and today the potential of a youth is far greater than the youth itself understands. So now you take that potential and you throw it in the trash for this dunya, it doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't sit well for us. It's not a good investment. That was the arrival of Islam. Come to Karbala, everybody here knows all the stories, all the musibats, everything you've heard for several years. If Imam Hussein's mission was to preserve and to save Islam, the backbone of his mission were the young individuals. The Qasims, the Muhammads, the Ali Akbars, a 6-month-old Ali Asghar. Doesn't matter how old you are. Ya Abu Abdullah, we can give your life, I can give my life that's so precious to me at the age of 13, at the age of 18, at the age of 24 for your mission. A 21-year-old at the height of his youth, at the height of his life, is ready to sacrifice the one thing that's near and dear to him, his own existence, for Imam Hussein the Deen. And when it comes to the zuhur of our Imam, it's no difference. You know, we have this misconception that we believe that the Imam's going to come with Zulfiqar in his right hand and start chopping off heads on day number 2. I've had youth actually come to us and say, you know what, I hear about the zuhur of the Imam, and while I get the idea that وَعَجِّلْ فَرَجَهُمْ, praying for the zuhur, I'm actually very scared of the zuhur. It sounds to me like it's going to be a very bloody event, and I don't do good with blood. I don't know if I can really witness this idea of severing heads and bodies being trampled, and I don't want to go through all that. The misconception is there. It's not the case. There have been similarities that have been given between the mission of the Imam of our time and that of our Holy Prophet. The first war in Islam didn't happen until 13, 14 years after the arrival of Islam. Before then, what happened? Our Holy Prophet spoke to the hearts of the people. He attracted them by speaking about truth and haqq, and being that source of hope amongst the hopeless, that source of light amongst the darkness. Min al-nur ila dhulumat, min al-dhulumat ila nur. Dhulumat is plural, nur is one. That same nur awaits us right now in Ghaybat. Don't think for a moment, when the Imam comes, it'll be in the exact same situation. The world will be filled with such darkness and such jahala. It will search that same nur that the era of ignorance searched for. And when that nur arrives, inshallah, like a mosquito to a flame, it's going to flock towards that nur. And through that, the Imam will win over hearts. And as we know, if we can do a khulasa of the groups that used to attract themselves to the Holy Prophet, there were 2 groups. The poor and the young. It was the rich and old that had the severe issue with Islam. It's the rich and old today that also are holding back the Imam from coming. It's the youth, it's the young individuals with their soft hearts that will be able to flock towards the Imam, and with the Imam, they'll be able to fulfill that mission and that promised government of Allah. إِنَّ الْعَرْضَ يُرِيثُهَا عِبَادِي الصَّالِحُونَ. Don't underestimate your potential. And don't underestimate the power you have in your numbers. And while I understand that everybody's after their own center, in my pocket, I want to make sure that our backyard is strong and then we move out, and that's understandable. But once in a while, prove to yourself that by taking the different pockets and coming together, you can move mountains, as I said last night. No force of this West can conquer any of you if you're able to come together. And all of you, mashallah, you don't have any cultural baggage. You don't judge each other based on the fact that you're from this part of the world, you speak this language. All of that, mashallah, is not there with all of you. If you see anybody, you see them for what they truly are. not where they're from, or what clothes they wear, or the color of their skin, or their accent or language, none of that. All of that, mashallah, for all of you is not there. That's why we see this idea. There's a very nice hadith by Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, قَدْرُ الرَّجُلِ عَلَى قَدْرِ حِمَّتِهِ. The qadr, or the power, or the value of a man is based on his himmat. Is based on his courage, for lack of a better translation. Certain words you just can't translate to English, right? Himmat is one of those words. Courage can be a translation, but himmat is something else. Himmat is that in the wake of the enemy, you're able to hold on to your deen and preserve your faith. Your value is based on how much you're willing to defend Islam. Your value is based on your himmat towards Islam. And while it's difficult, we don't run from difficulty. Us, the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we don't welcome this idea of sitting in a corner and letting the difficulty pass us by. We stare that difficulty right in the face, we tackle it, and we move on. The story of Nabi Yunus that a lot of us have heard several times is a lesson for us. Nabi Yunus, of course, was that prophet who spent time in the stomach of the mammal or the whale, as some say. And while we know pretty much the story, what sometimes we don't understand is to grasp the akhlaqi points from this story. We know Nabi Yunus was in the stomach of this animal. And we know that the animal that he was in was such an animal, follow me now for a second please, was such an animal that didn't swim at the surface of the ocean. Follow me please. The animals swim, or used to swim at the very deepest part of the ocean. Now I want you to imagine this. Nabi Yunus is in the darkness of the stomach of that mammal. That mammal is in the darkness of the deepest part of the ocean. Metaphorically, Nabi Yunus is at the deepest portion of this earth, scratching rock bottom. And in that, the Quran says, what? فَنَادَى فِي ظُلُمَاتٍ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ إِنِّي كُنْتُ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Right? فَصْرَفْنَا لَهُ وَنَجَّيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْغَمِّ وَكَذَلِكَ نُنْجِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. That we read Nawaz al-Fayla. That in the darkness of the stomach of that mammal, he didn't blame Allah, he didn't blame this person, he cried out saying, Subhanaka, glory be to you, it was me who made a mistake. Sometimes a lot of us are at levels in our life where we're scratching rock bottom. Our youth, sometimes you guys are struggling, we get that, we know that. It's not easy to preserve your deen in this part of the world. And a lot of you are at stages that no one else understands. Your pain, only you understand. But it's at that moment when you don't run from the deen, it's at that moment when you run towards the deen. It's at that moment when you're scratching rock bottom that you say, Subhanaka, inni kuntu min al-zalimin. I'm glorifying you, Allah, with the admission that I'm the one to blame. And the Quran promised you the same way that we saved Yunus, the same way we'll save the mu'mineen as well. Understand that when you are at that level, you have no choice but to run towards the deen. But oftentimes we see that when things get a little bit rocky, the first thing we sacrifice is our iman. The first thing that goes are our deeds. The first place that's ignored are the centers and the massages. In fact, we have the himmat sometimes to blame Allah. How many times have we talked about this? That our iman sometimes is tested through severe tragedy. Where God forbid a tragedy hits us, our reaction to that sometimes is so negative that we blame Allah for that tragedy. We say, Allah, I'm a mu'minah, I do my best to raise good kids, I pray salat, I serve the community. You thank me by taking away my Jawan son, for example. You thank me by tragically making my husband leave this world. Is that how you thank me? Look at the thought pattern. They say that the dirt in the ocean or the dirt in the swimming pool stays at the bottom, provided the waves don't move. When the water moves, the dirt from the inside floats to the surface of the pool. We're the exact same way. We have dirt inside of our hearts. And when we get shaken and things start to stir, then we see the asliyat of our heart come out. Until then, we're good, we're floating, everything's good. But the moment things hit a little bit hard, the moment now Allah starts to test you, then we say, wait a second now, this won't cut it, sorry. Understanding this as a youth in these precious years is very, very important. We have a hadith by Ibn al-Mu'min that says what? That the one who learns these various ulums and realities at a very young age, it's as if he is carving it in a rock forever to stay. But when an old individual learns new realities, it's like he's writing in the sand, very easily washed away. Start carving your own rocks from now. Start understanding these realities from now. I often give the example of a sidewalk being laid. Have you seen a sidewalk being laid? In these new developments of homes, when they start making the sidewalk, first what they do is they lay the cement down, right? And then in order for the cement to dry, they put ropes around that sidewalk. Why? So you don't step on that cement. If you step on that cement while it's wet and that footprint stays, it'll dry that way. And now you have this big, ugly footprint in your sidewalk. And it dries that way. Now if the city wants to once again remove that footprint, the process is very difficult. Break that cement, relay the cement, put ropes up and pray that no one with a size 12 foot puts a footprint on our sidewalk. My youth, the cement inside your heart hasn't dried yet. Put ropes around your hearts. Don't let anybody and everybody come and put footprints all over your hearts. If it dries like that, and you're in your 50s and 60s now, for you to break that cement, relay the cement, put ropes up, it's not impossible. Very difficult. Your cement hasn't dried yet, guys. Don't wait for it to dry to wake up all of a sudden. It's important for you to understand that. The potential all of you have is enormous. When Amir al-Mu'mineen is preparing his son, Muhammad Hanafiya, to go into Jannah Jamal, in Najm, the first statement he says is that, look, you're going out to that war, mountains might move from where they are, you don't move from where you are. You will be at a state, if you're not already, where you are sitting there and the wind around you is so ferocious, it's swaying you back and forth, back and forth. Stay where you are. Don't move from where you are. Because God forbid that your cement dries in a state that you don't want it to dry. And now when you're 50 and 55 and all of a sudden you wake up, like I said, it's not impossible. It's a very difficult task. You have at your disposal what others did not have. And you've heard this 1,000 times. Right? The advancement of Islam in the West in terms of books and YouTube videos and English lectures and majalises and resources and ulama who are there to help you. All of these are things that while they exist in my time in Toronto, it wasn't at the level that it is right now. The excuses are running out for all of you. The expectation is rising for all of you. Yeah, it's now time that you hold on to that flag of Islam. And say, you know what? I want to be that flag bearer. Because the situation isn't going to get any better. And your iman will be tested over and over again in this world. Begin to build those skill sets now. And these 10 days that I've been with you at baitulqayem, we've been trying to do this revival of Islam. You know, and don't ever shy away from ups and downs. And I'll close out with this. Don't ever shy away from ups and downs. You know, the example I've given at the camp I was here 3 years ago, if you remember. It's a point that Sheikh Mutahari makes about problems and hardships. It's a whole philosophy, by the way. Hardships and problems in Islam have many, many philosophies to it. One of them is the example he gives of a heart monitor. My doctor's in the audience. If God forbid, you have to have your heart checked. They strap you to a heart monitor, correct? All of you with me, inshallah? Yeah. They strap you to a heart monitor, and then at that moment, the doctor waits for a reading. It's one of two readings. Either it's an up and down reading, which means everything's okay. Or it's a flat line. Oh, it's over. That's it. Look at a simple heart monitor sending us such a beautiful message. The ups and downs on that heart monitor is a what? A sign of life. The flat line is a sign of death. Problems sometimes, hardships sometimes, is a sign of life inside of us. Are we awake? Are we up for the task? Are we able to understand what's happening or not? Can we read the state of our existence? Do we have that hayat? يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله ولرسوله إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. Answer the call of your Allah and your Prophet when they invite you towards that which will bring you life. That path of the Ahlul Bayt is that hayat zindagi. Do we have that inside of us? If somebody strapped a monitor to us, what will be our reading? Now right now it's 8th Muharram, it's skyrocketing. It's very, very good. I'll ask you on Sunday, on the 11th of Muharram, when those of you who come out of your rocks for 10 days and go back under your rocks, I'll ask you at that moment, that have we gained anything from these 10 days? Or has it become simply a 10 days of rituals? Tough questions to ask ourselves. But Islam is in dire need of you, the youth, in this Western hemisphere. And like I said, they constantly rib you and poke you, looking for a reaction. React, but react under the banner of Islam. If they're spewing jahalat at you, response with your aql and your ilm. If they're becoming an animal in front of you, your response by showing your humanity. The ultimate level of akhlaq is what? That you face the evilness with your own goodness. That's the ultimate level of akhlaq. It's very easy that if somebody in front of you is barking like a dog, then you bark louder. It's very easy. If somebody is jahil, oh, I can show you jahil. Right? You want to see jahil? That's not the kamal. The kamal is he's spewing garbage at me. He's spewing fire at me. I'm the water that puts out that fire. That's the kamal that we want. They make their movies about our Holy Prophet, they write their books about the Holy Prophet, they write cartoons about our Holy Prophet. We shouldn't get into this idea of jahil versus jahil. No, it's their job. Right? If dogs don't bark, what will they do? That's their job, let them bark. But you don't become an animal and start barking. You said, look, you might be an animal or a dog, I'm a human being, my brother. This is who I am, this is my response to you. You want to try to close down our Holy Prophet? I'll show you by adopting his lifestyle. That the Holy Prophet through me is very much alive. This is what we need. And you do that with each other. My brothers and my sisters, nobody will be there for you but each other. Your community is your second life. Sometimes it isn't your life. It's your home away from home. Come together, join together, be one united front. And while you look after your own backyard, in your MFIs, in your baitulqayem, in your baitul-asrs, that's all great. But once in a while, pop in together. Sit down together and realize the numbers that you have and the strength that you have together when you decide to come under one banner of Islam. And then at that moment we can expect victory. We ask you Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us, inshallah, give us tawfiq to understand our true maqsad, our true purpose, especially the mission of Imam Hussein, to not only commemorate it, but to apply it to our life, inshallah. Allow us to understand that while there is injustice, there is tyranny, there is bloodshed in the world, we have a hope of the arrival of the Imam. And we ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when the Imam comes, he looks at us and he realizes that these are my companions, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. questions for one question that came up that said that I think Lana also did answer a little bit was, could you discuss the issue of anti-Islam movie and what factors played in it? What is our role in relation to this movie?
Is that geared towards me or anybody?
Or it's either way. Yeah, it's just general.
He's the fountain of wisdom. I'm not. I don't know. I mean, the question should be addressed towards the other. I touched upon this in one of the speeches about these factors. You know, these. The one point I'm going to make is, you know, the more press that we give these types of movements, when they don't deserve press, and the more attention we give these movements when they don't deserve attention, I think sometimes the more damage that we're doing. The question of what were the factors?
Yeah, I think it was just more like what's like our role in this.
Yeah. Well, like I said in just about 10 minutes ago, you know, our role is to always take the higher road, you know. At the same time, you know, we should have some sort of response. You know, I've asked a couple of the youth in Toronto now to possibly, you know, for example, you know, we live in a social media world. You know, you guys are able to get a message out now, like click of a mouse. You know, maybe you can have your Facebook status as something else, you know, in terms of a dedication to the Holy Prophet. Then you can have, let's say, the term of the Holy Prophet trending, let's say, on Twitter. Maybe you can have, you know, for those of you who are, you know, in the movie industry or your filmmaking industry, perhaps you guys can come together as this group and produce a documentary on the Holy Prophet and put that on YouTube and have that blasted all over social media, that while they have their version of the Holy Prophet, this is the real version of the Holy Prophet. So the response to that is like that. You know, those are things that we can do. You know, writing articles, publishing books, handing out pamphlets, let's say, about the Holy Prophet. You know, having conferences, let's say, like for example, in Toronto, we had a program a few months ago where we invited local churches and local synagogues to our center, and we talked about the Holy Prophet. And there were several priests who came to our center, and they really enjoyed the program. So there is one aspect of it where we can respond to these types of allegations and these types of movements with our own tabligh. And of course there is the akhlaqi point, where somebody approaches you or somebody that talks to you about it, then you maintain, like I said, your humanity, your dignity. You represent the Holy Prophet. How many times have we heard about stories about, you know, garbage being thrown on him, feces being thrown on him being called a sahir or a majnoon, being called crazy, etc. And what was his response to all of this? And so we have to adopt the same response as well.
One question that came that's pretty relevant for right now is how can we youth work towards more unity when one obstacle that might be keeping our elders have strong opinions on keeping their own identity? So I guess they're trying to say the elders are obstacles. So they're saying, I guess, how can we as a youth work towards unity when one obstacle might be that our elders wants to keep our own identity?
I'm not answering that question.
You know, there are different ways of looking at it. One is that we have to understand the process of migration. It's a very gradual process. We cannot totally blame the elders who came from their own, you know, countries, their own cultural way of doing things. That was the initial stage where they wanted to maintain their faith according to their own cultural values, and there's nothing wrong with it. But I think, you know, you have to have kind of flexibility on both sides. You still have to respect them for what the sacrifice that they have made in settling down in a foreign land for them. But then they also have to open their minds and their hearts that the young generation, you know, you youths basically are either born or raised in this society. You are a Shia Muslim in America, not a Shia Muslim in Iran or Iraq or Pakistan or India or other place. And so, you know, the forging of that identity of a Shia Muslim youth in America is this process where you're already going through it. And so this is a very, very, you know, gradual process. You have migration, then you have other generations coming in. As long as you're able to maintain your core values of the faith, even if it manifests in future in a different cultural context, we shouldn't have a problem there. And so, you know, that if you consider that to be an obstacle, it will be there, but I think, you know, as Brother Asad mentioned, you can't have life without difficulty. Or as I use the term in the context of my talk, and the Majari said, MFI about married life, you know, a married life without challenges is a very boring life. So you have challenges and you have to deal with it, you know. You will not succeed all the time, but as long as you strive to succeed, you know, that would be a positive, you know, sign for us, inshallah.
One other question that came in was, some say that the family of Imam Hussein was imprisoned for over a year. So why is it that we commemorate them for only 2 months and 8 days? So.
Then you'll be doing majlis every day.
Yeah, basically.
I don't think that's the whole purpose of Azan. And whole the entire, you know, sanctity or importance of Azan will become, and it will go down. You know, everything is its own time and place. And our Imam has been asked to do that on an everyday basis for the whole year.
We barely come for 10 days, so how are we going to come for a whole year?
Someone recently asked, why do we do such rituals, such as men becoming, actually, ignore that, sorry, this is better. If my wife, daughter, or sister knows that hijab is wajib, but she does not observe it, is it a sin for me to take them out in public? Do I get a sin for that? Is that sin? Yes, it's more of a jurisprudential question, but.
Well, the issue of taking out somebody from the family member is one issue as an act by itself. If that person now happens to do something which violates the Sharia law, that person himself or herself will be responsible for it. You know, as long as you have done your duty of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, of advising them and using your influence to the extent where it's possible for you. You know, if you have, for example, refused to take them out, you know, previously, even if that doesn't work, then at least you have done your Itman Hujjat, you have fulfilled your duty. So there are steps, you know, you have to take before you reach to that stage where you will say, okay, now I can take them out, but then they are responsible, the same would not be on me.
The only point I want to add is about this idea of, you know, inspiring your family to follow the religion. There are different methods that can be used. I know that a lot of my parents especially, you know, it hurts them when they see their child not following a certain part of the deen. But you have to understand the capacity of your child when it comes to the Sharia. Not everybody has that tawfiq, not everybody has that inspiration or the easy understanding of, let's say, certain rulings. It's very difficult, let's say, for a sister to wear hijab in this society. I don't think that this process of you threatening to not take her out of the house unless she wears hijab is a very effective way of promoting the idea of hijab. And you want to make sure that you make her understand, of course, like Mona said, about all of the various dimensions of the Sharia law. At the same time, perhaps you can build her tawfiq a little bit, build her awareness, build her fear of Allah. And the result of that will be the fact that she will follow now and begin to follow Sharia law. You know, threatening her and imprisoning her, keeping her in her room, for example. And these things, of course, I think will make things worse, unfortunately.
Is doing nazar on food wajib and necessary? And is it okay to eat food that has been packaged by a Hindu company or so? Or food that has been prepared by them?
That's 3 questions.
It's one person asked 3 questions. So, yeah.
Well, first of all, to do nazar is not wajib anyway. You know, I think there's a problem also in the community as far as nazar, to understand what is nazar. You have a whole story in Surah Al-Dahab or Surah Al-Insan where you talk, you know, the whole narration of the 3 days fast, nazar done by Amir al-Mu'mineen, Fatima, and the family. Nazar actually means to make a commitment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if this and that happens to me, you know, whether it's, you know, cure for illness or success in the business or passing the exam, then I will do this and that. That is nazar. And there you have to use actually the words properly, that I'm doing this nazar for the sake of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If it is not done in this way, from the Sharia point of view, it's not really a nazar. So what we hear in our, you know, communities, you know, doing nazar on the food is something which is more traditional, but it's not a technical nazar as known in the Shia fiqh. And so the issue is not wujub anyway. There is no nazar which is wajib. I think the way I have understood what people do in South Asian Shia community, when they talk about nazar, they are basically doing this intention of, you know, giving that food to the mu'mineen, you know, for the sake of pleasing the Ahlul Bayt, as a way of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's very different from the nazar that we know in fiqh. And if it's done in that way, you know, the niyyah itself is sufficient. You don't have to recite anything on the food. You know, it's your intention which counts. And so that's the first issue, that it's not really an issue of wajib at all. The packaging, I mean,
well, naturally, I mean, in terms of Hindus, we don't view them as Ahl Kitab, of course. And so if we know for certain that this food has been prepared by them, we're not able to consume it. The question about packaging, however, again, if you have complete yaqeen that the packaging is done by a Hindu company, and there are, you know, signs that are obvious, I would refrain from using that packaged food. Because, you know, there are moments where you're able to perhaps bring about some ihtiyat points, or at least some points where maybe this happened, but there are certain areas where it's pretty clear to you that this has been packaged from a Hindu company. Now, for you to say, oh, you know, they might have a few Muslim employees, and those Muslim employees might have packaged this certain package, and so it's okay for me, that's a little bit of a stretch. Where there is room for wiggle, of course, you can do that, but here I think, if it's a very obvious case of it being packaged by a Hindu company, I would refrain from it.
One question we got, what signals will we get when the 12th Imam comes, inshallah?
well, they are, you know, the issue of certain signs. I think one of the most obvious one is that the announcement would be done where every person on the face of the globe will hear that. Now, how will we hear it? How are we respond? We're going to respond to it. That all depends on whether we have that, connection with the Imam of the time. All these issues, sometimes we worry about, what are the signs we should be looking for when Imam will appear? We are waiting for the signs to get ready. And that's the wrong way to, look at the whole issue. People have these, interests, especially when they hear majalis and lectures about the signs of what will happen, I think the most important thing is that we have to be ready. Every day, every moment, we should be ready when the Imam of the time comes. And if we are ready in that way, then the connection will be there. And we will get the message, we will know, because that is a connection of heart to heart. And so that's the main thing I think we should be worried about, not all these signs that we look for, and we want to study more about it. I think we have to prepare ourselves spiritually more for it. That whatever signs are going to be used by the Imam, we will be connected to those signs.
So inshallah, I think we'll just do one more question and then we'll go for a break afterwards, and the other questions we can do after the other speech we have time, inshallah. This question is those, our youth, especially at the college level, are trying to keep up with their values and education. How can you help them keep up with their values and education since they stay up late at night and sometimes end up doing qaza namaz al-fajr, for example? So what advice can you give them to balance it out and not do namaz late and to keep those values, intact?
We had a discussion on the 3rd of Muharram about balance in Islam and achieving balance in our day. And we touched on that a little bit that night, talking a little bit about physically balancing out your time across 24 hours. We have, of course, traditions that talk about that a mu'min has time allotted for worship and rest and jihad and halal entertainment. This society will push you towards extremes when it comes to your time management. Put 14 hours towards your work and your business, spend 10 hours at the library, and everything else kind of suffers. Islam says no. You have to be able to really manage out your time and be able to schedule your time accordingly. That requires you sleeping at a good time, eating on proper timings. Everything needs to be there. Because the hadith goes on to say that when you go towards extremes of one portion of your day, the other portions of your day suffer. And that's what the question was talking about. Then I'm up until 1 o'clock in the morning studying, and then I sleep right through Fajr. It's because you're not managing your day properly. There's no reason why you should be up until 1 a.m. cramming for an exam, or doing a report, or procrastinating. If you manage your time a little bit better, even on the night of the exam, sorry guys, you would be in bed by 10, fresh, you wake up, you go to the exam, and you ace it, inshallah. That's what is required. It's a matter of management of time. My father marhum used to always press us to, actually physically devise up a schedule. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. we're doing this. And I used to laugh and say, okay, I'll do it. And now, if I had done that, I'd be better at managing my time. And that's literally what all of you have to do, especially, during the holidays, especially during the foresight of the summer vacation. The idea of going to bed at 3 a.m., waking up at 3 p.m., these types of things, that's, you're ruining your entire schedule. So one thing I will say is that read up on discussions on time management and physically manage up your day into 4 pieces, as Nabi says. And ensure that all those 4 pieces have its due time.
Thank you, Mullahs. So right now it's 2:27, so inshallah we'll take a break to get refreshments and whatnot. Keep in mind that we're somewhat tight on schedule and there are a lot of questions coming in now, it's getting popular. So by 2:55, I'd say finish up and stop eating so we can get back in here. So inshallah we can start our next speech at 3 o'clock sharp. And that's about it. So please